What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So today we had Famitsu sales charts come out, and it shows that the Switch is like a couple thousand units right around the PlayStation 4's lifetime sales in Japan. And that's from 2 weeks ago because we had Golden Week. So we're going to get another update, I believe, tomorrow for the Golden Week, and we'll find out if the Switch did pass the PS4, and it looks like it probably did. We're going to go over that, and then loot boxes are back in the news with the government because it does look like they are targeting loot boxes and attempting to make them illegal with a new bill that has been introduced, and it's going to get pretty serious here, I think, with companies like EA, Ubisoft, and everyone else who loves taking advantage of these loot boxes and random games of chance that are built into these games. As always, guys, enjoy these videos, make sure to hit the like button, it does help out, and get subscribed. We're heading towards 300,000 subscribers, so if you like to keep up to date on all the news and gaming and everything that's going on, we can keep you guys up to date here, 8 a.m. Eastern Time every weekday morning. Today, we're actually going to start with Ghost Recon. Now, we know Ghost Recon is going to be unveiled later on today at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. However, Ubisoft, well, they accidentally may have revealed the title on their own website. As you're seeing here, Wario64 actually posted this screenshot that shows Ghost Recon Breakpoint. It's the Collector's Edition, the Wolves Collector's Edition, in Ubisoft's own store. So there you go, Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Now, there was also some description of the game that seems to have got out there as well that kind of shows it might actually be a sequel, in plot at least, to Wildlands. So a lot of stuff to look forward to there if you're a Ghost Recon fan, and we'll have to see what they have for us. It's actually 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and then we have State of Play later on as well, so it's gonna be a pretty busy day. Oh, and do you remember Code Vein? Code Vein just disappeared for the longest time. We had no idea what happened to it. I guess it went back into development, needs some more time in the oven. Well, it looks like they're gonna be doing a network test for it, and it showed back up. There was gameplay and everything. All of a sudden, Code Vein is back. Yeah, a network test is happening. You can actually sign up for it. Now, we don't know when it's actually happening, but it looks like it's going to cover like chapter 1 of the game, and they did show PS4, Xbox One, and everything. They haven't shown anything about a possible Switch version. I know that was out there, and people were speculating on that's why it went away for a bit. At least at this time, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and they're going to be doing like basically a beta. So if you want to try it out before it comes out, a network test, just go ahead and get signed up for it. And we still don't really know anything about a release date or even when that network test is happening. It's just good to see that Code Vein is still a thing and they didn't slowly push it in the background, wait for us to forget about it, and then cancel it. I guess they just had to do more development time on it. We also have a new Arcade Archives out today, May 9th. This is pretty cool because you're going to hear the title and you're saying, well, I already played that on the NES. That's Ninja Gaiden, right? It's like, oh yeah, I played that. I raged at that, back in the day on the NES, and I'm not really that interested in playing it again. Well, this is different. This is the arcade version of Ninja Gaiden, which is actually a beat-em-up style game, and there's some gameplay here you can see. This is actually showing up, like I said, today in the eShop for $8, $7.99 USD, and this is a really cool thing to see. This is, of course, from Hamster that does all these little arcade archive things, and when I heard that it was Ninja Gaiden, I said, wait, that's odd, okay. But then they said it was the arcade version, and I got really, really interested. This is pretty awesome to see, and I do like these arcade archives. This is just one that a lot of people probably haven't played, and for $8, this is actually a pretty good pickup. And one of the most popular games from the Nindies presentation that we had recently, which was Cadence of Hyrule, actually might be showing up this month. This is an interesting situation. We saw that Nintendo had a newsletter that sent out, and Cadence of Hyrule appeared to be in May's newsletter, and now it's actually appeared on the European eShop, as was posted up on Twitter that you're seeing here. And this could be something that just gets announced randomly on Twitter, and then it just shows up. I thought this would have been a good shadow drop at E3, and technically it still could, right? It could just be coming soon, and it falls into June, because June, obviously, E3 is like, 2 weeks outside of May, so that could be one of those shadow drops at E3, and honestly, I think that's where it would do really well. But this has the Zelda IP attached to it and everything as a bit of a crossover. So I think if they just announced it on Twitter randomly, they just said, hey, Cadence of Hyrule available tomorrow, most people would just go pick it up anyway. But it's good to see. We won't have to wait too long for it, as I know some people were really excited. And the fact that it could launch prior to E3 is really, really cool, because after E3, it's going to be all about Mario Maker 2. Let's be honest here. That's what everyone's going to be talking about. So if they can get this out in May, a month before Mario Maker 2, that makes a ton of sense. And guys, some of the quick things out of the way. Let's let's get into the bigger stuff. We're actually gonna start today with the Famitsu sales charts. We don't have Media Create anymore, but we do have Famitsu, and they still give us an idea as to how things are doing over in Japan, week to week, physical sales. And we're actually gonna start with the top 10 that you're seeing here. Days Gone topped the sales charts at 114,000 copies. That is very good, actually, for Days Gone. I mean, if you think about it, God of War did, I believe, 125,000 in its first few days, because, of course, it launches on like a Friday, so you only get like 2 days of tracking. That's very, very good, actually, for this game in Japan. So good to see for Days Gone, which has actually been selling higher, I think, for expectations for a lot of people. Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age, it's on the Switch at 20,366 copies, so I think Square is pretty happy seeing Final Fantasy XII up there like that. And then Sword Art Online Hollow Realization, which is an older game, obviously coming over to the Switch, 17,618 copies. So the Switch is pushing these older games that are coming over now pretty well in Japan, it looks like. Smash Bros. Ultimate at number 4, Minecraft at 5, Dragon's Dogma, another older game, coming over to the Switch. They're at 10,207 copies in its debut. And then we have Yoshi's Crafted World, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and then the Labo Toy-Con VR Kit rounding out that top 10. The Labo VR Kit has now sold 43,175 copies. Moving over to the hardware, this is where things are going to start getting very, very interesting. The Nintendo Switch at the top, 42,108. That's up from the prior week, which was 40,338. And if you look at the lifetime sales right now in Japan, 8,042,000. If we go down to the PS4, which did 14,167 consoles that week, which actually was up from the previous week, probably thanks to Days Gone, of course, 8,047,000, which means that the Switch is nearly within margin of error. It's like I said, less than, 5,000 copies or so, 5,000 units, I should say. So it's getting very, very close. The 3DS, 4,580, the Vita below that, 536, and the Xbox One at 155 units. So a couple things to note here. Days Gone, great opening. I think it's performing higher than what Sony maybe even thought it would, with the lack of marketing, I should say, for this game. So it's doing really well. Like I said, it's only off from what God of War did in its first week, or first 2 days, I say, by what, 10,000 units? So we'll see how it kind of does going forward here. Also, if you look at the top 10, 9 of those games are Switch games. Yeah, so Japan is being overrun by the Switch right now. It's about to pass the PlayStation 4, which, to be honest, we'll get reporting for the week after this one we're checking now, tomorrow, most likely, from Famitsu, because, again, they're a bit behind with Golden Week and everything. At that point, it's probably already past the PlayStation 4, just how trends are going, unless 0 Switches sold or something. Most likely, the Switch at this time is the leader right now, market share, systems, and everything in Japan, which is where you're going to see a shift in games in development from Japanese developers, especially since we're going into the next generation for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5. We're going to have a bit of a reset there. And then you also have to wonder, okay, is the PS5 actually going to launch at 400, or is it going to launch at 500? And then it might struggle a bit in Japan, not necessarily in like the US or Europe, for example, but they might be a bit more conscious about a $500 system in Japan. At which point you start to wonder, is it actually going to get to something like 8 million, 9 million? The Switch is on pace. I think this is like a 3DS situation here, where the 3DS is like, what, 20 something million? The Switch might be that in Japan when it's all said and done. At which point, yeah, you're going to get a lot of Japanese RPGs and just games in general moving to the Switch. So interesting stuff there. We'll get the full report, like I said, most likely tomorrow, and then we can look back on it and say, okay, the Switch has officially passed the PlayStation 4 very quickly, by the way, in Japan. Next up, let's quickly talk about Need for Speed with EA. We do know a new one is coming this year. That's all we know, is that it's happening, apparently, so that's the thing. I assume at E3 they're going to show gameplay, announce it, release date, the whole thing. The only problem with Need for Speed, specifically the franchise, is after this most recent Need for Speed Payback, it's kind of going downhill. People weren't happy with it, the reviews weren't great. People were kind of annoyed that microtransactions were shoehorned in with a random system of getting parts and everything, and it was all over the place. People just weren't very happy with it. But during their earnings call, which wasn't great for EA, they're struggling a bit. But in this report, they talk about how they're going to be going back to their roots. Andrew Wilson specifically talked about going back to kind of being like you versus the police kind of thing. Like, I'm thinking like Most Wanted kind of, or even I guess you could technically say Hot Pursuit. I would like to see Need for Speed Underground 3 be a reality, right? Carbon 2 you could get away with. I think we go back to Underground 3, and I think it sells well, honestly, just because of that name alone. But if they do go back to their roots, as they're saying, I think they would do better. Also, EA is kind of pulling back from loot boxes and random games of chance in their games, which we're going to talk about here in a second, most likely because of government intervention, or at least they see it coming. So I think without those issues, we could actually have a good Need for Speed. However, after Payback, they have a lot to prove. But I'm at least hopeful after hearing the direction here, you know, going towards you versus like cops racing around and everything. It could be good, but we have to see more about it. And we have to see if it's going to have these microtransactions and random games of chance shoehorned in, hurting the game, of course, but we'll see. I at least like what we're hearing so far. E3 is, what, a month away now, and that's where we should see it. Next up, let's talk about loot boxes, because it does look like the government is once again getting involved with this situation. And we've talked about it a lot. If they don't regulate themselves, the government will eventually do it. And they are now. And that's the thing. Prior, we have the ESA. They should be taking care of this, or at least companies like EA, Activision, Ubisoft, they should be looking at this. Take-Two, right? They should be looking at this and saying, okay, if we keep pushing it, we're going to get in trouble. And they pushed it hard. And they're already kind of feeling the sting a bit with their investors because their sales are kind of leveling, whereas before it was just this massive, shot up because, of course, the in-game monetization stuff they figured out. Well, now it looks like, the government's actually working to pass a bill, it seems, at least one's been introduced, that would be making loot boxes just flat out illegal. And that means like for phone games and everything. So at this time, the part that's very interesting is it's actually a bill that has been introduced by Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri. And this bill is working to ban any games played by minors or whose developers knowingly allow minors to engage in microtransactions. And the bill is called the Protecting Children from Abusive Games Act. So that's a title for a bill right there. Now, they do mention in this case, they do mention right now that things like Candy Crush Saga is something that they are pinpointing right now, but it does technically count for, of course, games that we're talking about with EA, Activision, everything else. And they don't want this stuff to be looked at by minors, it seems. So the way I think is this going to happen, it's going to be illegal, but I think it'll be by a ratings board, which the ESA should already be taking care of this as it is, to where it would be an adult-only game. And if you have an AO rating, guess what? It's not going into retailers at all. And most likely it would be governed by some sort of gambling regulations and everything. And that's something that these companies don't want to be attached to. Remember, Disney came knocking on EA's door supposedly and said, you gotta cut this out with Battlefront 2. And they did. But it got to that point. It got to like 0 hour the day before it came out for that to happen. So I do think EA, Activision, Ubisoft are going to be going kicking and screaming. But EA's already kind of been pulling back. It's going to come down to FIFA, though. That's the one that's really going to push them over the edge. And we're going to see how everything goes with this bill. If you remember, we talked here on this channel, talked to Representative Chris Lee in Hawaii, who originally they were trying to do something similar. It didn't seem to work out, but they were trying to work towards getting more of a focus on these loot boxes. And we did a full interview, and it was pretty cool to do. There's a link down in the description if you want to check that out again. But we're going to have to follow this closely because this is just the start of them attempting to get this bill passed and everything. And at that time, things are going to get real crazy with EA and Activision Ubisoft. Just see what they do. And we're going to finish up today with the comment of the day from yesterday. And this was from actually Naki UK saying, Final Fantasy VIII Remake, might as well announce it now for PlayStation 6 because it's been that long since 7 was announced. They're talking about a state of play that's, of course, happening later on today. And we talked about how Square seemed to be retweeting or talking more and more, specifically Mr. Hashimoto, about this state of play, referencing it, hinting towards something. And I did originally think, okay, yeah, Final Fantasy VII Remake makes sense, right? The Avengers Project could be it, but that seems like the big blow-off at E3, I think, would be the Avengers Project with Endgame and everything happening, and Marvel hype at like an all-time high. We just had the new trailer for Spider-Man, which looks really cool with Mysterio. So I think that's their big blow-off at E3. But Sony fans would probably get a kick out of seeing Final Fantasy VII Remake again But what if it is Final Fantasy VIII? And here's what I'm thinking when I'm seeing this. Look, Final Fantasy VIII has had its issues, right? So far, I believe it's on Steam and everything. Here's the thing though, the issue that we've heard is that source code was lost, damaged or something, and they haven't really been able to do much with it. I'm not thinking of a full remake. I'm just thinking of them getting the game together and putting it out on the PlayStation 4, like, you know, the PS1 style game, for example. And that way they can resell it there and everything and kind of complete, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10-2, 12. Those are all there, but 8 is the one that's missing. That would be a really cool third-party Square Enix reveal at the State of Play. But it probably won't happen, and if anything, it might be Final Fantasy VII Remake, just being shown again saying, hey guys, don't forget about this, it still exists, see more from us at E3. That's actually a good strategy from Square to get more people to watch them at E3 by showing it there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike, leave comments down below about everything we talked about, whether it's loot boxes and the government and trying to make them illegal. I'm not excited about the government being involved in video games because, well, they might not stop being involved and then all of a sudden, what do they do with our violent video games or games that they don't like, you know, being out? Do they start affecting those, or do they just stick with loot boxes? That's my one concern, is if they continue being involved with this whole situation, just try to regulate everything, but we'll see. We'll see about that one. And then what do you think right now about the Switch passing the PlayStation 4, it seems, in Japan? Do you think that means that massive amounts of Japanese support is on the way, especially something like Code Vein, which we haven't heard anything about a Switch version? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.